Professor Sudha, Professor Vedraj, all friends. Vanakkam. Today is a very, very important occasion. Specifically, we are to think about two great personalities, Baba Saheb and Ambedkar and Modi ji. I would like to, as an academician, I would like to look at three very interesting aspects which Baba Saheb Ambedkar pronounced several decades before, which today the United Nations has recognized as the Sustainable Development Goal 4. Number one is equitable access to education. Number two, Baba Saheb Ambedkar was such a visionary that he looked at the world as an age of machinery. And he was also the person who had put out saying that skill development is as equal, as important as higher education. I think these three are really important today as we are moving towards a nation with lot of youth. We have the maximum number of youth at the age group of 15 to 40. We have the maximum number of requirements in terms of skill and employment, and as we are moving towards Industry 4, these 3 points become extremely important, and I would like to see how this dream of such a great personality, which was several decades before, has come to reality under the leadership of our beloved Prime Minister Modi ji. The first, there was a Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana and the National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. Today, several lakhs of people have been benefited by these two schemes. The foundation of this, or the vision of this, was very well pronounced by Baba Saheb Ambedkar under his emphasis on skill development over higher education. What we see with awe today is Modi ji's multifaceted approach to serve our country. Every idea that had come out, and subsequently the way it is implemented, as Sudhaji mentioned, the Jan Dhan Yojana, the impact it had on the people is something amazing, and it's actually a manual. These two books are manuals for every person to carefully study and look at all these aspects and understand these aspects and put it to practice. I must briefly touch upon the National Education Policy 2020, which was a culmination of multiple ideas that had been put under experimentation, and the effects of this had been realized, and that has been consolidated in this National Education Policy. One was multidisciplinary education. Number two is equitable access to education, quality education to all, improving gross enrollment ratio, lifelong learning, imbibing tradition, culture and science into education. There's a very, very interesting article written by Ms. P.V. Sindhu as a part of the book Modi at 20. I suggest that every youth carefully study this particular chapter, which gives lot more insights into how youth development can happen, how education can be very carefully curated and given to the youth. All these aspects, today we are very surprised and we are very wow-struck to see that these are some things that are articulated in the Sustainable Development Goal 4. When we had the fortune of hosting the first seminar in the history of G20, Education Working Group, at IIT Madras Research Park, and I had the privilege of trying to sum up what every country looks at education, what are the challenges in school education, higher education and skill development. And I must tell you that every problem that was stated by each of the country, every challenges that were stated by each of the country, India has either has certainly looked into the solution, and either they have implemented a solution or in the process of implementing a solution. This gave us enormous insight into what education means in the world scenario. Yes, Sri Surjit Balla, who had written one very interesting article, he has stated Modi, the Bhagirat Prayasi. One interesting thing which every one of us should know, that when a crisis came, we can call it as Modi mantra, never waste a crisis. And there came out one single word which has greatly touched upon every scientist, every academician, every industrialist, every citizen of this country, the word called Atmanirbharta. Based on that, we as a country had got our political and social independence in 1947. We must become a technology superpower by 2047. And the root of this, I must say, comes from this particular word, Atmanirbharta, which the Honorable Prime Minister, in one of his address to the nation during the lockdown, made this statement, coined this word and put it in front of us. After that came several policies, Make in India, the semiconductor mission, the telecommunication, Atmanirbhar telecommunication, our 5G, the 5G technology of India, and Vande Bharat Express. These are some small amount of examples that we could give because of that one statement, Atmanirbharta. We had also looked at diversity and equality in a great detail. As Dr. Sudha mentioned, the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, this addresses gender diversity in a very subtle way. Lot of schemes came out just because of that particular statement. Just talking about IIT admissions, we have introduced 20% quota for girl children. This is one immediate output that came out of this very wonderful scheme. Looking at finance, Jan Dhan, of course there was a very nice emotional articulation done by Sudhaji. But most important from the technology point of view, the UPI today has become a world standard. This is something that came out just because as a country we were stubbornly self-sufficient, and we promoted this technology and supported this technology, which would not have been possible without a political will. And that is what our Honorable Prime Minister gave us. For all administrators, Vice Chancellors, Directors, we must read one article written by our Honorable Home Minister Amit Shah ji, wherein very clear articulation on how do you react, and he has touched upon 5 different scenarios. How do you react when there is an economic churning? How do you react when there is an infectious disease, a pandemic? How do you react when there is a natural disaster? How do you react when there is a terrorist attack? How do you react when there is a threat at border? These are 5 interesting case studies. Every administrator, every student, every youth has to understand, because life will pose a lot of challenges and the way we react will determine our future.